Hello dear students, today we will be discussing about rheumatic fever. Okay, acute rheumatic fever, it is otherwise known as ARF. It is an acute autoimmune disease that occurs as a sequelae of group A beta hemolytic streptococcal infection. So it is an autoimmune, one factor you have to remember, it is a autoimmune disease and it is occurring after a group A beta hemolytic streptococcal infection. Here it is characterized by inflammatory lesions of connective tissue and endothelial tissue primarily affecting the joints and heart. So the major inflammatory reactions, the lesions are occurring in connective tissue and endothelial tissue including joints, heart, etc. So generally it involves joints, skin, brain, serous surfaces and heart. So these are the involved areas or involved organs in rheumatic fever. Okay. So it is not a communicable disease. Rheumatic fever is not a communicable disease, but this rheumatic fever results from a communicable disease, streptococcal pharyngitis. Okay, so there is a relation between the streptococcal pharyngitis and the rheumatic fever, but the rheumatic fever is not a communicable disease, but streptococcal pharyngitis is a communicable disease which leads to a complication, that is rheumatic fever. It is a leading cause of acquired heart disease in pediatric population. In less than 5 years of age, the acquired heart disease, the most frequently seen acquired heart disease is Kawasaki disease, and after 5 years, 5 to 15 years, this rheumatic fever is the leading cause of acquired heart disease in children. Regarding the epidemiology, like age 5 to 15 are more susceptible and it is rare in less than 3 years and it is more frequently seen in girls than in boys, and environmental factors like overcrowding, poor sanitation, poverty, these all increases the chance of rheumatic fever. Incidence is more during fall, winter and early spring. So the predisposing factors of rheumatic fever already we discussed, that is include poor socioeconomic status, overcrowding which is happening in orphanages, military recruitments, etc. Unhygienic living conditions, undernutrition and altered immunological response increase the susceptibility. So these are the predisposing factors which increases the incidence of streptococcal pharyngitis and in turn increases the incidence of rheumatic fever. So regarding the pathophysiology and etiology, exact a single etiology is unknown, but frequently explained theories says that there is a relationship between acute renal failure and the streptococcal pharyngitis. Most first attacks of acute renal failure occur 1 to 5 weeks, like average 3 weeks after a streptococcal infection of the throat or of the upper respiratory tract. Peak incidence occurs in children ages 6 to 15. Incidence after a mild streptococcal pharyngeal infection is 0.3% and after a severe streptococcal infection it is 1 to 3%. Family history of rheumatic fever is usually positive. So what we can understand is it is not all streptococcal infections are leading to rheumatic fever, but in certain reasons like predisposing factors like undernutrition or other factors increases the chances of rheumatic fever. Not necessarily all streptococcal infections leads to rheumatic fever. Okay, that's why we can say that it is only 1 to 3% after a severe streptococcal infection. Okay. So regarding the pathophysiology, 1, 2, 3 things you have to understand. Okay. Group A streptococcal pharyngeal infection precedes clinical manifestations of acute renal failure, acute rheumatic fever by 2 to 6 weeks. So after a group A streptococcal infection, like after 2 to 6 weeks, generally the child will be presenting the manifestations of ARF. Body produce antibodies against streptococcus. So here what happens in our body is, when the streptococcus enters our body produce certain antibodies against streptococcus. These antibodies cross react with the human tissues because of the antigenic similarity between streptococcal components and human connective tissue, that is known as molecular mimicry. That means some part of the streptococcal body and our body tissues or the organs looks similar. That is a molecular mimicry is happening, or mimicking our body with the streptococcal bodies. So here when the antibody is producing this, because of this antigenic similarity, the cells are destructed along with the streptococcal bacteria. So immunologically mediated inflammation and damage, that is autoimmune, auto destruction is happening to human tissues which have antigenic similarity with the streptococcal components like heart, joint, bone, brain, connective tissue, etc. So here what happens is, body is producing antibody and there is some antigenic similarity between the streptococcal bacteria and our streptococcus and our different body tissues. So that's why the antibody produced will go and destruct that similar organs or the tissues. So 1, 2, 3 factors which is mimicking with the streptococcus is, because of the similarity between hyaluronic acid in group A streptococcus capsule and in the connective tissue of the joints, antibody produced against group A streptococcus capsule will start to attack the joints and cause arthritis. So it is explaining how the arthritis is developing in rheumatic fever, because the presence of hyaluronic acid is there in gas capsule, that is a group A streptococcal capsule, and also it is present in our joints. So this inflammation of the arthritis is happening because of this similarity. The second similarity is the presence of M protein in gas, that is group A streptococcus cell wall and the myocardium are similar. So M protein is present in the streptococcus and also present in the myocardium. So thus antibody produced against the streptococcus cell wall will attack heart and will cause carditis and so forth. So this is the second reason for the rheumatic fever, like the presence of M protein. The third similarity, it is similarly the antibody against N-acetyl glucosamine. NAG stands for N-acetyl glucosamine in group A streptococcus will affect cardiac valve tissue causing valvular damage. So these are the factors which mimicking our body tissues with the streptococcus cell wall. So the first one is hyaluronic acid, second is M protein in myocardium and streptococcus, the third one is N-acetyl glucosamine and streptococcus. So when a streptococcus sore throat is developing, you can see that tender lymph nodes will be there, and close contact with infected person, it will be spreading easily. Otherwise there will be scarlet fever, rash, excoriated nares in infants, tonsillar exudates in older children, and abdominal pain. So these are the conditions in which we suspect streptococcal infection. Okay, like tender lymph nodes are there, very close contact with a streptococcal infected person, scarlet fever rash, excoriated nares in infants, then crusted lesions in infants, tonsillar exudates in older children, abdominal pain. So, when we want to diagnose streptococcus or throat, the gold standard is positive throat culture. So usually we may not be going for a throat culture with each and every pharyngitis, but when the manifestations of rheumatic fever starts, it's a it's an emergency situation, and we go for positive throat culture, and it gets positive. So these are the changes which can be noted in a streptococcal pharyngitis. So the clinical manifestations of rheumatic fever, we can see the features includes the first, already we know that there will be a upper airway infection with the group A streptococcus, and usually it will be a silent period will be there after this infection for 2 to 6 weeks, and after that there will be a sudden onset of fever, pallor, malaise, fatigue. Commonly, group A streptococcal infection is subclinical. Such cases confirmed during using streptococcal antibody testing. So this is about the first part, like before the manifestations of rheumatic fever arises. Okay. So next we can see the rheumatic fever manifestations. So the guideline for the diagnosis of rheumatic fever is originally suggested by Dr. T. Duckett Jones, and it was subsequently taken up and it is revised by American Heart Association. So according to Duckett Jones and American Heart Association, for diagnosing rheumatic fever, there are major criteria and minor criteria, and the third one is essential criteria. Major criteria, minor criteria, and essential criteria. So these are listing the manifestations of a patient with rheumatic fever. So the major manifestations are polyarthritis, carditis, Sydenham's chorea, erythema marginatum, subcutaneous nodules. Okay. So the major manifestations are polyarthritis, carditis, Sydenham's chorea, erythema marginatum, and subcutaneous nodules. So these are the major manifestations of rheumatic fever. So we can see one by one in detail. First is the polyarthritis. So in the pathophysiology, we already discussed why this arthritis is happening. Because of the autoimmune reaction of this antibody, because of the presence of hyaluronic acid in the joints, which is already present in streptococcus. So this antigenic similarity causes the arthritis. Most common feature is polyarthritis, and it is present in 90% of patients. Majority of the patients will be presented with this polyarthritis. So joint is arthritic, that is inflamed joints can be seen, painful, migratory, and short duration. So this pain, it's very painful, and it is shifting from one to another one, that is migratory, and it is of short duration. Usually it is affecting more than 5 joints are affected, and mainly large joints like knees, ankles, wrist, elbow, shoulders. These large joints will be affected largely than small joints. Small joints and cervical spine is less commonly involved. So these are some of the important points of polyarthritis. Excellent response of salicylates and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Like with any other arthritis, the difference is that when we are starting salicylates or any non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, the pain and the inflammation will be suddenly resolving, and pain and swelling come on quickly and subsides within 5 to 7 days. And in children below 5 years, arthritis usually mild, but carditis more prominent. Arthritis do not progress to chronic disease. Any arthritis or any other chronic diseases are not developing after this polyarthritis, and this is very rarely seen in less than 5 years of age. So this is about the first major manifestation, that is polyarthritis. The second manifestation, major manifestation is the or major criteria, it is the carditis. Early and most serious manifestation is the carditis. So the very alarming situation or emergency situation is developing when we have a carditis, and it is manifest as pancarditis. Pancarditis, nothing but it is involving all layers of heart like myocardium, pericardium, endocardium, everything is involved. That is the pancarditis, and it is occurs in 60 to 70% of cases. In rheumatic fever, 90% is occurring in polyarthritis. Polyarthritis is occurring in 90% of the rheumatic fever and is slightly reduced, but it is seen in 60 to 70% of the cases. Then carditis is the only manifestation of rheumatic fever that leaves a sequelae and permanent damage to the organ. So after carditis, it is leaving a permanent change in the heart of the child, which is not usually seen in arthritis. So that is about the permanent damage can be seen in the organ. Valvular damage is the hallmark of rheumatic fever, or it is known as rheumatic heart disease. So valvular damage is a hallmark, and chronic phase can be there like fibrosis, calcification and stenosis of the heart valves. So this can be present in carditis. That is a valvular damage and chronic phase can be seen. Next is the Sydenham's chorea. Sydenham's chorea, that is a third manifestation. So when the rheumatic fever is involving the brain, then the Sydenham's chorea will be appearing, and it is occurring in 5 to 10% of the cases, mainly in girls of 1 to 15 years of age. Okay, and late manifestation of rheumatic fever, months after infection, months or year after the infection, if it is not treated, only in 5 to 10% of cases we can see Sydenham's chorea. Spasmodic, unintentional, jerky, coriform movements can be seen. Spasmodic, unintentional, jerky movements can be seen in Sydenham's chorea. Speech may be affected, and coriform movements particularly affect the head, that is darting movement of the tongue and upper limb. So some movements, abnormal movements can be seen in the Sydenham's chorea. So the first sign may be like difficulty walking, talking, writing, and occurs in 30% of patients with acute rheumatic fever, and usually benign and resolves in 2 to 3 months. So disappears, leading to no damage, no permanent damage in the brain area. That is a Sydenham's chorea. The fourth major criteria, it is the erythema marginatum. So these are some skin changes. So it is occurs in very low or very incidence is very less, like less than 7% of cases we can notice this erythema marginatum. Unique, transient, serpiginous looking lesions of 1 to 2 inches in size. So these are the appearance of erythema marginatum. So pink macules will be the clear centrally serpiginous spreading edge. So this is the clear in the central, and it will be seen a circle in the surrounding. More on trunks and limbs and non-itchy, almost never on face, and worsens with application of heat. Then often associated with chronic carditis. So this is about the erythema marginatum, and this is the appearance of erythema marginatum. The next one is subcutaneous nodules, like small, painless, mobile, hard lumps beneath the skin. So that is known as the subcutaneous nodules. You can see the subcutaneous nodules. These are the nodules which are firm, not tender, isolated or in clusters. So extensor surfaces of joints like knee, elbow, wrist we can see. Also on bony prominences like tendons, dorsi of feet, occiput or cervical spine, and it appears 4 weeks after onset of rheumatic fever. Delayed manifestation disappears, leaves no residual damage, and it occurs in 9 to 20% of cases, often associated with carditis. So this is about the subcutaneous nodules. So the remaining we will be seeing in the next video.